How you doing? My name is Cyril. Talking to you out of Baltimore, Maryland. I am starting a new podcast, and it's called Connecting the Dots with Cyril. And what this is about is a way for me to sort of relay a lot of information on different topics to you about what's going on. So my background a little bit is right now I hold a Bachelor of Science in Applied Psychology with a concentration in alcohol and drug counseling. I have my AA degree in chemical dependency counseling. And in the fall, I will be going to Capella for my doctoral in human behavior. I'm 59 years old. I was born addicted to alcohol. I've used for 34 years. I have 25 years clean and 10 years of education, and I'm still working. And I've been working in the field of counseling now for 10 years. So today's segment of Connect the Dots is really, I'm talking about the coronavirus and what's going on, and it's our whole idea of flattening the curve. And we've been hearing that a lot, and everybody's saying it a lot, and no one sort of explains it a lot. So I was talking to one of my colleagues the other day, Tone, and she was like, "So Max, you explained that so well, but why don't you do something where everybody else can get it?" Because one of my abilities is to be able to take really crazy things and really high things that sort of way out there, and I bring them down, and I bring them to people so they can understand them. So let's talk about this first segment about the coronavirus, which is flattening the curve. So what they mean by that is trying to stop new transmissions of the disease of COVID-19 going from person to person. So the best way I can explain that is what I've explained for years to everybody who's ever took one of my been in one of the programs I've been in and heard me do a group lecture. So the first thing we're going to talk about is my favorite thing. It's the bell-shaped curve. So the bell-shaped curve is what explains mostly everything from behavior to shopping habits to pretty much how everything is ever going to be brought, sold, marketed. So that's why you go to Walmart's in Towson, Maryland, and they have a different product than they sell at the Walmart's in Glen Burnie, because the bell-shaped curve tells them what items are going to sell in which area and where to get them from. So we're going to use the bell-shaped curve, which is used in everything, to talk about flattening the line. So here we go. So here's the line. Here's the bell-shaped curve, right? And so the bell-shaped curve is based on 100%. So everything in this world is based on 100%. So the bell-shaped curve says that the normal range of anything is 70%, and there's 15% on this side, which is outlier, and 15% on that side, which is outlier. So we're going to talk about the 15% outliers, the 70%, and then the other 15%. So when we're looking at the bell-shaped curve, talking about the coronavirus and how to control it, we're talking about the 15% we're going to talk about is right here. It's going to be called asymptomatics. So asymptomatics means, and they've been saying this a lot, asymptomatic means I'm walking around, I have no symptoms, but I am already infected, which means I could, and because depending on who I am, how the disease works, how weak I am, do I have other diseases, I may be asymptomatic for up to 2 weeks, which means I may be walking around for 2 weeks, going to the grocery store, going to work, hugging my kids, talking to my wife, and have the virus in me, COVID in me, but not showing symptoms. But even though I'm not showing symptoms, I'm able to pass this disease, this COVID disease, on to other people as I come into contact with them. So then the very next stage of that is what they were talking about in the beginning, is where a person becomes pre-symptomatic, which means now I'm showing signs and symptoms of COVID-19, which means I have now my body, and we're talking about the body, my body's beginning to try to heal itself. So it's really trying to expel COVID-19 out of my body. And so in trying to do that, it's going to make me cold, make me hot. It's going to give me signs and symptoms that something's going on. And what we believed at first was, and I didn't, but because it makes no sense, because I believe in the common cold and how it's transmitted, and I believe all viruses and flus of that nature, bacteria are transmitted the same way. So that's me, and I'm putting on my scientist practitioner hat, which is what I am. And so the scientific practitioner to me already knew that we were missing the biggest part of this in America, which is the asymptomatic piece. So the pre-symptomatic piece, like I told you, is when I begin to show signs and symptoms that I've been infected. So now I'm getting the cough, the sneeze, the ache in the chest, all of the signs and symptoms that I have, beginning to have or may have COVID-19. That's in that 15% going up to the 70% of the bell-shaped curve. Because at the top of that curve, of the bell-shaped curve, is where 70% of Americans, 70% of the people in the United States, once they reach this point, will have all the signs and symptoms of COVID-19. And this is where we begin to lose the majority of the people who will die from this disease, in that 70%. So, and the best way to explain that to you is, if you look at 70% of anything, that's a big lump sum of people. So if you're doing if you're going to do this 100%, so if 100,000 people come down with COVID-19 and 70% of them begin to show signs and symptoms of the advanced signs and symptoms that they have the disease, if that's 70%, then that's the amount that might die. And then on the other end of that, we have what's called post-symptomatics. So once you're in post-symptoms, your symptoms, you either had it, you're coming down, your symptoms are going away, and then you'll run into what's called non-symptomatic. The disease has fully left your body. So here's the problem when we're looking at this, when we're talking about this. So everyone in China and everywhere else wear masks when these things come out. In America, somehow we just don't get the idea. I guess we don't like seeing ourselves in masks. And I guess because we feel we're superior or whatever, we don't put the mask on. So one of the problems we're going to have right now in America is for 4 months, when this disease first was found out, we weren't testing severely, and then we were not covering up. So that means for 4 months, this disease has had a chance to ramp itself up and infect more and more people, right? And that's the problem. And more people will become asymptomatic. And so what happens is we have all these asymptomatic people walking around with no mask, breathing on everybody. And so at first we were into the 6 feet distance. So it came out, and it's already been out, that a cough and a sneeze can go 27 feet. Right, so the 6 feet was already inadequate, but I understand what America was trying to do, because there was no way that you can stand 27 feet between you and another person. It's really almost impossible. So they did the 6 foot rule. But what we should have done from the beginning is put masks on. And what the mask does is it stops me from transmitting it to you, which means it stops you from getting it. So that means if I'm asymptomatic, I will not for 2 weeks walk around and spread it everywhere I go for those 2 weeks, and then spread it to those people who are now asymptomatic, and then they go out and spread it to other people for the next 2 weeks. And it didn't matter about the 6 feet, because the 6 feet was insufficient anyway, right? And now we found out that it has very little to do with all that coughing and sneezing. That's parts of it, but it has to do with you breathing anyway. And whenever people breathe, we have droplets of vapors that come off of our breath when we're talking, because our mouth is moist always, and so we always are letting out some type of spit. So that's when we started figuring out, which I already knew, but that's okay. If you follow me on Facebook, my name is Cyril Scovins. I'm on Facebook, and if you follow me, I've been on this for a minute. This is not new, so for the last 2 months, I've sort of been leading up to this, but now I'm going to put it out because I think Tone was right. You can't get what I'm trying to say when I'm trying to put it to you in little bites on Facebook. So the way that we can flatten the curve, because it's never too late. I say a joke like, you can get to the party early, you can get to the party on time, or you can get to the party late. But the problem is you just got to get to the party. And so we at the party. We've been at the party, okay? We've been here. COVID's been going on for 4 months. We've been coming at this thing haphazardly from a lot of bad science, not so much bad politics or bad science. And that's what we've been looking at, bad science. So now, So now how do we flatten the curve? Because what we're trying to do is so the best way to flatten the curve was never the 6 feet. It was to cover our faces up with masks, right? To cover our face up so that we're not breathing on somebody else and they're not breathing on us. So that we're not walking around for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, asymptomatic, kissing our kids, going to work, infecting other people, and then they walk around asymptomatic, and theirs might not be as long because they may be weaker with other diseases. They may have diabetes, they may have heart disease, they may have other things that's already weakening their system. So when you come in contact with them, they get sick faster. They fall into this top 70% faster than you. But you'll get there too, because after 2-3 weeks, you're going to stop, you're going to go from asymptomatic to pre-symptomatic. So now you're going to be showing the symptoms of COVID-19 where you're going to be weak, you can't get up, you can't go to work, you can't swallow. So now you know you got something. So you're going to call the hospital and they're going to tell you, hey, you know what, we've been late on this thing, we don't have any testing kits. And that's another problem in America. We haven't been testing for it. We haven't been masking up for it. And so we sort of got a big curve coming, but we can still flatten this if you listen to what I'm telling you. Everybody needs to have a mask on. Do not listen to somebody telling you this is voluntary. To flatten the curve, because it's an asymptomatic, it's past more, so it's more prevalent an asymptomatic simply because you're going to be around more people because you're not exhibiting any symptoms. You're going to be around less people when you start becoming pre-symptomatic, which means you're going to be sick, you're going to be feeling bad, you're not going to go around anybody, and guess what? Nobody's going to want to be around you if you're in the house coughing and sneezing and looking bad and talking about, oh. So, when you get to that stage, it's already nobody's going to see you. It's the asymptomatic stage that's the most dangerous, because no one can tell that you're sick. You can't tell that you're sick, but you're walking around passing it on from person to person. That's what the mask does. You still can do the 6 feet, because now with the mask on, the 6 feet makes sense. Because now I have a mask on that's going to control any cough, any spittle, anything that's going to come out of my mouth. And it's also going to cover your mouth so that you don't get anything that's coming in. So we found out now that it lingers in the air. So I was explaining to a friend of mine, I said, well, listen, here you go. So if something disperses from your mouth and it goes in the air, it doesn't evaporate from the air right away. It actually travels on wind currents. It travels on currents and it goes here and there and there. So here we go again. For 4 months, we've all been walking around talking and laughing and joking. Oh, the COVID thing, everybody's laughing and joking. But that creates plumes in the air that can go from place to place to place. So here's where wearing a mask makes more sense, and where covering it up makes more sense. Because the problem is, in order to flatten this curve at the top of the bell-shaped curve, we got to flatten it at this level. So the most important piece of what I'm getting ready to tell you is this. We can only flatten the curve when we all put on masks. Now, we got this big problem going on. They're like, so okay, here we go. Most of the masks are in China. Most of the masks are in China. Oh my God, the masks in China, they're probably gonna come with COVID. Okay, so guess what? Most of the ventilators come from China. Most of the TVs come from China. Most of the stuff we buy today in America comes from China. So if COVID is already coming on the mask, it's already on your clothes you bought from China, that you just bought at Walmart, that you just bought at the store, that comes from China too, right? And even the expensive clothes come from China because it's cheaper to make clothes in China. So let's get away from all that it's come from China stuff, right? Because everything pretty much in your house, if you flip it over, it came from China. So let's stop that madness. Get some masks, right? Now, I got what they're saying, we want to save the mask for the doctors. So if you're on my Facebook page, Cyril Scobin's Facebook page, here's what I explain to everybody. So as a person with, I don't have billions of dollars. I'm not going to get a jet to fly over to China and get $2 million worth of masks and gowns and stuff. I don't have that kind of money. So, but what I can do is send to China and get me 200 masks. right? And they're selling right now, if you go to AliExpress or some other places, they're selling the masks for like $10 for 100 of them. They still got rubber gloves. They're selling 100 rubber gloves, 100 of the gloves you need for $12. So here's where we're getting tricky. These aren't the masks that the hospitals need. These aren't the N95s, right? These are better masks than you making one out of cloth, because these masks are made, these are the masks that you'll be using in construction anyway. Most of them are called KN95s. So they do filter out 95% of the stuff, but they KNs. They more for contractors and people along those lines. But these masks have filters. These masks have removable charcoal that you can use, and these masks don't cost a lot, right? And the other piece of this is I've been on Facebook, and I'm hearing everybody should be protecting the nurses and doctors and all that, and we can. But there's three folds to this. The first fold is the first law of self-preservation is you need to protect yourself in order to protect them. So if we flatten the asymptomatics by all of us wearing masks, we already flattened the curve of all of our doctors and nurses being put in harm's way, because more and more of us are going to go in the hospital and die. Now, here's what's going to be true, and I got to say this because we late to the party. Remember I just said you can come early, you can come on time, or you can come late. But there's some repercussions to what I just said. So if you come early, you save more lives. If you come on time, you save more lives. You come late, you take more lives. So we are late to the party. America, we are late to the party, but that's okay because we're here. I'm all right with that. I'd rather be late to the party than not get to the party at all. And that's what I'm talking about. Let's get to the party. So we at the party. So as an American, it's your job to protect you by wearing a mask and buying a mask and purchasing a mask so that you can protect you. And then there's a layer of government. And also, and I'm going to do this, there's a layer of government. So there's the federal government, there's the state government, and then there is the local governments. But then there's another layer, right? In between that, there's a layer of people the 1%, who have been making billions off of us for years, off of selling goods, buying goods, off of our work efforts. So there are 1% who have billions stored up, right? So if we got some of them into the game, right? So Robert Kraft showed you that if a billionaire decides to get in the game, he has a Lear jet, he has a jet, he has money, and he has means and opportunity, and he flew to China, and he stayed there for 3 hours. They loaded him up with 1.6 million masks, and he brought him back. So say if every billionaire in the country decided to do that, and say the billionaires in that state did that, and then they protected that state and they gave that to the hospitals. Now let's look at some of these institutions like Johns Hopkins and some of these institutions that's been around forever and have more money because they've been doing research forever and have more money. Then they need to also invest some of their money in purchasing the masks and the gowns and the things of that nature. So I was on AliExpress the other day, and here you go. They had 100 gloves for $12. They had the different types of masks that we could use as regular people that's not cloth, that we could use, and they were selling them anywhere between, for 50 to 100 masks, between $5 and $10, right? They had gowns. They had the face shields for $1.99 that the doctors need. The face shields that can go over their face, they're selling for $1.99. You can get 100 of them for $119. I'm not understanding this, America. I'm not understanding this, people, that we're not protecting people. We're not, because we don't want to buy from China. Come on, man, we buy from China anyway. You can go open a box of something today that came from China. But you won't buy a mask from China. You won't buy a gown from China. You won't buy the goggles to save lives from China. That makes no sense. That makes no sense, because we're talking now about saving lives. And so my job as a scientist practitioner, right, because that's what I am. I'm a scientist practitioner. I'm also the founder and president of CMS Institute of Addictionology here in Baltimore. So I'm telling you this from, the level of science. because I don't do opinions. Anything I tell you, you could go, because the greatest tool that everybody in the world has is this phone they keep in their hand. When somebody tells you something, go to your Google, go to your Bing, go to your Mozilla, and put in what they said, and you'll have 1,000 pages of what they said, and doesn't make sense. Now, here's the other thing. I don't get a lot of my information, I'm sorry, from other people. I tend to get a lot of my information from scientific journals, because I need some proven experience with this. So if you've been following me, I've been doing the 1918 pandemic, influenza pandemic that hit America, and how it happened. It came in 2 waves. And I said in the spring of 1918, a lot of people got sick. They caught the 3-day fever. Now, it's a pandemic. So in 1918, it was all over the world, and it was going on, but except for transportation was slower. If you was going to get from, you wanted to take a boat ride from, a ship ride from New York to Europe, it probably took you a month. So diseases didn't travel as fast as they do today. But it still got here. So in 1918, the fever came, the influenza fever came in the spring, and it got a lot of people sick. They got the 3-day fever. It was terrible. Some people died, but then it went away. Summer came and it went away. Look for that this time too, because that's what happens. That's what happens with viruses. When hot weather comes, the viruses don't die. They lay dormant and they mutate and they get stronger. So then in the fall of 1918, the virus resurfaced. It was a new virus. It resurfaced, and when it resurfaced, they said at the height of its resurfacing, some people would cough, and within 3 hours they would be dead. Understand what I'm saying? When it came back in the fall of that year, when it resurfaced again, some people would cough and they would be dead within 3 hours. So, and they said their lungs were filling up with fluids. We're looking at the same thing. And so I want to help you with this piece too. The disease came from China. Okay. The swine flu started in America. MERS started over in the Middle East. All things start somewhere, so that doesn't matter. And so if you look at science, every so often animals' diseases jumps to man. So animals have RNA, we have DNA. Every so often it happens, the RNA jumps from an animal to a man. The problem is that when RNA jumps to us, we don't have a natural defense for RNA. We don't. So we have to build one. And it normally takes a lot of lives to build one. So a lot of people died in the influenza epidemic of 1918 in America. And we died from the same thing. I was reading it. We died from the same thing. We didn't put masks on. We didn't test soon enough. We didn't do anything. And it's crazy because I cannot believe in 2020 we are doing the same things that we did in 1918. Right? I cannot believe that this society did not become enlightened enough to understand what happened before. Right? So here I am. This is me pleading with you. Get masks for yourself. And the cheapest masks, and they have gloves, and they have hand sanitizers, not the kind with alcohol, because all those aren't needed. The ones with alcohol is needed for the doctors, but they have other ones that's non-alcohol. It's just as the FDA says, it's just as good, that can be used by us. So get those, right? I bought some. Get those, right? And leave the ones for alcohol for the doctors and the nurses. Get yourself good masks. Cloth masks won't work, please. It's a temporary barrier. But I'm telling you, if you go to AliExpress and you go to these different shops overseas in China, you'll be able to get these types of material. They're going to be sent to you within 3 to 7 days. They're going to be enough that every American can begin to protect themselves. And as we begin to protect ourselves, we begin to flatten the line. And by flattening the line, that means because as we're walking around, we won't have as many people walking around asymptomatic because everybody will be carrying a mask, right? Everybody will have on rubber gloves, right? And then the hospitals will have the proper materials to do what they need because they'll be bought some new masks, some new gowns, new gloves, new everything. And then because the line is flattening because we're wearing masks and we're protecting ourselves, we're still staying inside, we're still washing our hands, we still wash your body as soon as you come in the house. Do not come in the house and sit down. If you come from outside, take your clothes off, put them in the washing machine right away. Do not Put it in the washing machine right away and go take a shower. Right? And stop all this putting on all this lotion and all that, because lotion things attract to you and they stick to you, because lotion closes your pores off, and lotion gets your skin, and that gets stuff to stick to you. Stop putting lotion on. It's not the time to be a little ashy. It's okay. No, I understand. Be a little ashy. It's all right. So, I'm trying to say all these things to say this. It's our job to flatten the curve. It's our job to spend the money to flatten the curve. It's our job to buy the proper materials to flatten the curve. It's our job. Every person in America is our job. It's our job to help those who can't. So that means if I can, because I will, because I'm still working, I'm a counselor, I'm still doing telehealth, so I'm an essential employee who's doing a great thing, but I'm still getting paid. I'm buying extra masks and things of that nature so that I can begin to hand out to people around me. So if you have extra money, don't just buy enough for you, buy enough for you and some people to give away. If you don't have enough money, pool together with somebody so that you can get a big enough order when it comes to your house that you can spread it out to people who are less fortunate. That's the America I know, where we who are more fortunate can help those who are less fortunate. I'm not rich, believe me. Come on, I'm working poor like everybody else. But to save lives is what this whole mission is. Now, here's the question. I'm going to end you with this one. How long are we going to be in this? We're going to be in this a minute. A minute. Don't let these cats fool you, man. This thing is, the world has shifted, the world has changed, and it does it every so often. The world has changed, and we may never go back to the world that we knew. I mean, not just America, I'm talking about the world, period. Right? The world shifted, if the world shifted during the, when all the banks went up a couple of years ago, then understand this is a medical, scientific world going up, which is a total game changer. Right? So, the world has shifted. It's going to be a while. Now, here's what's really important. If we don't begin to put masks on and purchase the masks and the proper masks and the proper things for us, not the N95s, leave them for the doctors, but we can buy the KN95s, and I'm telling you, they're selling 100 of them for $13. Come on, man. You do the math, and they're good. You can wear one of them about 3 or 4 days, then you can throw it away. Then they got other ones that you can change the filters in, wash them. They cost about $13, but then you can wear them and you can buy 100 filters. So now you got 100 filters for 100 days. That's what I'm talking about. You got the 100 gloves. So this is what I'm talking about. That's how we flatten the curve. In case, because I don't hear them explaining that too well. They just keep, we need to flatten the curve. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean to me, an everyday Joe? I don't speak Governese. I don't talk outside. So you need to understand how it works, and this is how it works, right? And if we begin now to wear masks and wear gloves and keep the distance and stay in the house and do all of that, instead of us losing, because they lied, I'm going to be honest with you, because in my estimation, for as late as we are getting to the party, 200 is a real low figure for the amount of deaths, right? Because we didn't do this thing right. So we can get it to 200 if we do what I'm talking about now. If we don't do what I'm talking about now, we're talking about 400 to 500,000 people in America dying. So now here's the thing. Okay, I feel, I can't stand it. This thing started from China and they eat meat, whatever. That's not my issue. My issue is, how do I save Americans? My issue is, how do I save this country, right? And the way that we save this country is we take that prejudice and that foolishness out the picture, and we purchase these things not just for ourselves, but for our neighbors who are less fortunate, and we allow the government to do what they have to do. And if we begin to have less asymptomatic people walking around, right, infecting other people, then we just flatten the curve and we save 200 to 300,000 lives. Hey, connecting the dots with Max. That's all I do, man. I connect a lot of dots. I've been connecting dots for the last 10 years, man. You want to know? So this is going to be my new show. You can thank Tone Strickland, who challenged me the other day. We were talking. She's my co-worker. We were talking, and she said, "Man, somebody got to hear how you talk, man, because I don't think we're getting this anywhere else. We're getting a whole bunch of other stuff." That's how we flatten the curve. That's how we save American lives. You know, we protect us. We allow the government to do what they got to do. And believe me, they better start going over to China, and buying the heck out of that stuff, just like Kraft did, you know, and bringing back plane loads of it because it's there. This isn't a time to be, because we have an old saying. I told you I got 25 years in recovery. We have an old saying in the programs I follow, say you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. You got to pick one, you know. So if you want to save your face and you want to walk around and you want to be mad and you want to blame everybody and finger point, please stop finger pointing the Asians, because I think they should have finger pointed us when the swine flu came out. It started in America, but they didn't. This is life, man. Stuff happens. The better part of life is how do we deal with it and how do we help other people survive. And so this is me, man. You're talking Sherwin Scovens, man, out of Baltimore, Maryland. And listen, if you know me, I'm going to say this, and this is how I end everything I ever do. Your job, now that you heard me, your job, because it's my job, your job is to save one. That's all I ever challenge a person to do. Save one. Right? Buy some masks, man. Put the mask on every time you go outside. Buy some gloves. Put the gloves on every time you go outside. Stay in the house as much as you can. Bend the bell-shaped curve down. Because if we do that, see how high my bell-shaped curve is? And the bell-shaped curve is how they do everything. If we do that, right? Look at that. If we do that, instead of being all the way up here, the bell-shaped curve will be there. And being there, that's 200 to 300,000 lives we just saved. American lives, man. Man, please, I ain't into that white, black, Chinese, man, American lives. And that's all I'm about, saving American lives. Peace out. You see me again, man. I got another one coming for you. We're going to connect them dots. Peace.